Yeah, it is always something.
Like every second treasury. And the second treasury, you get caught.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Carroll Chamber of Commerce Legislative Forum. And thank you for joining us today in this virtual event. I want to thank the city of Carroll for hosting this event today. We appreciate the opportunity to connect the public with our legislators. I'm John Brocklesby with the Legislative Committee. The format for today's program will include some prepared questions, which I will read, and they're long ones too, so get ready for that. And questions submitted by email to the chamber office. This forum will take approximately 1 hour. I'd like to introduce Senator Craig Williams and Representative Brian Best. And we will start with them with a 5-minute opening comment. And I'm going to ask them to, inside that comment, include what happened with the first funnel, what bills that you wanted to see passed didn't, and what priority items you believe will stay on course. And Senator, if you would want to start.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Senator Craig Williams and from Manning. Appreciate folks having this forum today and the opportunity to address everyone. It's my first year in the Senate, and it's been interesting. Last week, I totally misunderstood. I thought they said we were going to have fun all week, and instead it was funnel week. Very different, and we didn't have a lot of fun. It was a pretty intense week on Capitol Hill. We talked about an awful lot of bills. We got handed some. I was handed a 97-pager on Monday morning and asked to get it run through subcommittee by Wednesday. And it was a tangled web of spaghetti of different policies for the banking industry. And fortunately, it was actually it was updating some information from 25 years ago. It hadn't been updated for 25 years. So most of it was fairly innocuous, like defining what a lockbox is and things of that nature. There were some sections of it that were very interesting, with putting some teeth into allowing banks to sell to another bank or another institution and without banking approval from the state. And that was probably the most controversial part of it. It passed through the subcommittee, passed through committee on Thursday. And I was able to address that and present that before the committee. It was one of the first ones I've ever presented before the committee, and we'll probably do it again next week before the entire Senate. So as far as bills that didn't make it through that I thought should, I really haven't paid an awful lot of attention to what hasn't made it through. So I'm probably not really prepared to talk about that. Some ones that I think have made it through. My wife is very interested in the daylight savings time bill that would keep us on daylight savings time. And I think there's an awful lot beyond this bill that has to happen for that to occur. But I'm in favor of it. I've actually heard from a number of people with children who are autistic, where the change in the time each week, since they're very focused on a set pattern of daily activity, that the time zone changes can impact them. Never thought about that really before. So that was kind of interesting, but I like daylight savings time, and I'd love to stay there. The broadband bills are ones that we're going to talk about later. I think that one has made it through. School funding bills, the constitutional carry bill, I think is going to make it through. And those were ones that I think are fairly important to everyone. So it's been an interesting week. Next week will be even more difficult. I think we've got 3 half days scheduled for debate and an awful lot of bills in front of us to go through. Very difficult to read through all of them and understand what every one of them has to say to be able to speak intelligently and to make a good vote on it. But that's what we're going to do. So thank you again for the time and opportunity, and hope we can answer the questions here today.
Thank you, sir. And Brian.
Thank you. John, I want to thank you for hosting this today and for being here to help us with your questions and to the chamber. The 5 bills, I'm talking about 5 bills that I'm very happy got through committee. One is called the Pharmacy Benefit Manager Bill, which basically takes some of the monopolistic advantages that pharmacy benefit managers, I'll call them PBMs, which they have over pharmacies in smaller towns like Carroll, Manning, the surrounding community. To be part of a pharmacy benefit manager group, you apply, but you almost have to be in that group or you're not going to get any business. And at the same time, they have a tendency of giving you or as a pharmacist, they give you the business that they don't want. Sometimes they claw back. They have the ability to claw back based on a goofy matrix that would allow them to take back money that they may have sent to you 6 months ago, and then they change the rules and they take the money back. It's just that bill needs to go, and it's been a bill that we've passed through the House, and it's a very important bill to me. I floor manage it every year. I'm floor managing it again. It made it through committee. It's passed the House unanimously last year, and 2 years prior, it passed the House with great bipartisan support. So I'm very happy that made it through. Another bill that I've worked on and actually introduced is the bill that I'm going to call it the CDL bill. But what it does is it gives the counties the ability to charge more to do a CDL. Right now, the state, as they're taking away more and more of the resources for somebody to get a CDL and a license. And a lot of that historically in the past was more on the state. Now it's becoming more and more of a county function where the state is kind of pulled out and redirected their money. It's something that has happened very and not in a big way. It's happened in small steps over the past years. And so what this bill does is it allows the counties to receive $75 for the CDL, the driving and one-on-one parts. You can still go to a state CDL place and pay the normal amounts that you would, so it's less expensive. But I believe the closest one to Carroll is Ames and Fort Dodge. So if you wanted to get it done, we're encouraging the counties to take that on by giving them the ability to receive some revenue for it. So it's not a money loser. Another bill that I was glad made it through is Telehealth Bill. Telehealth Bill is a bill that directs the payers to pay equal amount for telehealth. It encourages telehealth, especially in the mental health area where there's just not enough professionals in smaller communities to do it. If you don't have telehealth, in some cases, you really don't have much for mental health because there just aren't enough professionals in this area. Another one that I'm glad to see went through is the hands-free bill. It made it through committee, and there's great interest in the Senate, and there's great interest in the House. What this bill does is it right now the law says that if you're texting, you're breaking the law. That for a police officer to pull you over for texting and know that that's what you were doing is almost it's just very difficult to know. Okay, if I was dialing the phone right now and I was going to call somebody and talk to them on the phone, that would not be an offense. Only the texting part would. So it's hard to know the intent. So this basically makes it much easier for law enforcement to pull somebody over. This texting itself and cell phones have caused, I don't know how many deaths they've caused, but they've caused a lot of deaths in the state. People are dying, and we've got to regulate that a little bit, I believe. And so I'm happy to see that the hands-free made it through. And the last one, and we'll talk about this later again, is the bottle bill. I'm glad to see that something is being done. We're at least having the conversation. And this is the first time, I believe, in 10 years or more that a bottle bill initiative has passed both the House and the Senate through committee by the funnel. So what it's saying to me is it's saying that there's interest at the state level to finally do something about what is at this point an unworkable situation, especially for the redemption centers who are really struggling. So that's one I'm very happy about also.
And I thank you, sir. Now for some prepared questions that I will read before we ask them to respond to these questions. And the first one is that long one that Miss Ashley, I don't know why she did this to me, but she did. Senate File 479 and House Study Bill 230 mandates cities and counties to maintain expenditures on public safety based on previous year's expenditures, or local entities will lose all state funding. There are some exceptions to this if the reduction is part of a total reduction or unless the entity has sufficient justification for doing so as determined by the Department of Management. The question really is, why should local elected officials have their decisions subject to review by an unelected staff from Department of Management? Second, this law would be a disincentive for local officials to increase public safety budgets for new initiatives, even initiatives that they may support for fear they can never end a particular initiative or face loss of state funding. What are your thoughts on this proposed legislation? And I would think this is probably an anti-defund the police bill.
It is.
So, Brian, if you would.
Yeah, you're correct. It is an anti-defund the police bill. In my personal opinion, sometimes we as legislators in the state level maybe do a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction to certain things. I think in some cases, the message is loud and clear. For those who think that police are not an important, integral part of the community, we're saying to them that yes, they are a very important and integral part of the community. And but what the concern I have with this bill is that it would take that situation and unintended consequences are always something that we have to look at. And so if we bring this forward and this passes, it's going to need a ton of work, because what it does basically is it puts the city management and the city councils and those folks who have to make decisions on budget in a bad situation where they may have purchased a $50,000, whatever it costs now for a vehicle, and then that is part of the budget for that year. Well, if you don't buy one next year and you fund everybody the same way as you have in the past, as far as your wages, the amount of police that you have, now you have gotten yourself into a bad situation where you have to spend the money, even though it was for just a one-time acquisition. So the bill, as I see it, is pretty is just fraught with issues that would have bad secondary consequences that aren't looked at. So I would not be in support of this bill as it stands right now.
Senator?
You bet. I agree with everything Brian just said. This bill needs a lot of work, and I understand the idea behind it. If you look at Minneapolis here, not too long ago, their city council defunded the police, and I think I posted on my Facebook page the same day. The outcome of this is no secret. We're going to have an increase in crime, and they have, and it's been skyrocketing crime rate. So this was a preemptive move. There are some cities in Iowa that want to do something similar or have talked about doing something similar and defunding the police, and we won't want any part of it. And our job is to help protect those citizens as well. And So I think that's what this was meant to be, but it has a lot of unintended consequences to it. It goes too far, and we need to find a better way to manage this one. I'm not in favor of this bill as written. I'll probably get in trouble from some folks back in the Senate for saying that, but it's just fraught with issues, particularly for small towns that just, like Brian was just talking about, you buy a vehicle this year and you don't buy one next year. Now you've got to go before the Department of Management and explain your situation and why you should be exempt from this. It's just got issues. So I'm not in favor of it as written.
Thank you. Would you comment on House Study Bill 258 and Senate File 478 that might prevent colleges and public schools from teaching or training involving what is called in the bill as a divisive concept, such as privilege, systemic racism, or implied bias? Senator, if you would.
Do you want me to go first on this one?
Yeah.
On
the spot.
Here again, this is a bill, and I understand what's behind it. I think it's kind of ridiculous for anybody to say that because of the color of your skin, you're going to be this way or that way, regardless of what color somebody's skin is. And it's no better to say that white people are bad intrinsically because they're white, as opposed to any other color. It's just craziness. So, and that's what they're teaching in some of our colleges today. The 1619 programs, a few others they're pretty much out there. Do we need a bill to tell our people not to teach this anymore? But that's sad that we even have to talk about it. I'm not in favor of this, but I'm not in favor of what the colleges and public schools are telling our kids either. How do we ever get to a colorblind society when that's all we talk about is color? It's mind-boggling to me that we have these kind of issues today.
Brian?
Yeah, thank you. I think the bill is almost the same situation as what we talked about before. Sometimes we get upset, we get frustrated. We bring forward bills that sometimes are maybe a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction and have a lot of passion to them. But at the same time, I agree with Craig 100%. I think that there's a lot of things going on in the school systems that the fact that people are teaching now that we are, just by the fact that we're born racist. I think some of these things, I just discount them. I don't think that's true. I don't think we're born racist. I don't think that we have to do these things that are being suggested by the far liberals in our nation. And so some of those things concern me. And what this does, I think, is it just tries to say that this bill says that, to teach that is wrong. I think that there's also some things in here in that bill. I read it, and I'm sure there's some things in that say also that it's completely wrong to judge an LBQ person in a bad light also. So, it does go to both sides. But again, I'm not sure what the need is or the meaning of it. I will look into it further, but this time I have some concerns with this bill also.
Can I follow up a little bit and ask both of you if you think it has a snowball's chance in making it through this session?
I would say no. I would be very surprised if it does.
I don't know. I would be surprised if it does as well, but I've been surprised before. So
Okay.
Yeah, well said. I've been surprised before too.
Thank you. Next one's on tax increment financing. TIF, as it's called. Revenue has been introduced and passed out of subcommittee. This bill will sunset legacy TIF districts and increase property value by 10%, changing the main resource used in rural Iowa to bring economic development. As you know, tax legislation is not subject to funnel week and can still come up at any time. Has there been any movement on House Study Bill 194 TIF? And I guess you get that first, sir.
Okay, be glad to take that one. The TIF bill, as we know it right now, does, I think, a lot of damage to small rural cities like Carroll and all the small communities around us. The legacy issue, I think, is what the person who brought the bill forward is looking at is getting the most scrutiny, actually, and that's probably the most advantageous thing there is to a rural area. So I would be a no on this bill. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not going to say if it has legs or if it doesn't have legs. I really don't know the answer to that question. But I think a lot of times when you see a bill like this and then you see what on paper, it probably looks okay, but when you go back and talk to the people that you trust at the local level and you find out that it has issues and it's not going to be helpful at all. We're doing all we can right now to prop up rural Iowa. I think the governor's, her intention is for us to make rural Iowa as good as it can be and to quit losing all the population from rural Iowa as they go to urban areas. This would be I think it'd be kind of a slap in the face. It wouldn't be a good, this is one of the things that rural Iowa can use in those towns to help them to modernize, to do these different things that you want to do to bring people to your community. And without this, it would be harmful. And so I would vote against it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not really sure where it's at, how many legs it has. I think that there are some folks like me that feel the same way.
Senator?
Yeah, so this bill is a House Study Bill 194, and so it's on the House side. I haven't seen it in the Senate yet, but I'm very well aware of it because I've been called by every municipality in the entire district to talk about it and what kind of damage it might do to each of our small towns here. I'm not an expert on TIF. I understand enough to be dangerous, but it appears to be very problematic for all of the towns in this district. And I think, I was told that there's some TIF abuse going on in other areas, and everybody brings back this thing from Coralville, Iowa, from a decade or two ago, that was the kind of the poster child for TIF abuse. But that's a long time ago. What kind of issues are we running into lately? I really haven't heard. But I think this is to try to address some of that. Probably goes too far again and would damage our local community. So from that standpoint, I'm not in favor of it at all. I definitely want to hear what other people have to say about it to see why this was brought up and is there a better way to address the issue than destroying the TIF.
All right. Thank you both. Have another economic development question here. Increased competitiveness and jobs, economic growth, tourism, and other items have all been priorities for Iowa Economic Development Authority, IDET. Manufacturing 4.0, tourism, and other IDET tech programs would introduce to increase tourism and loan funds for manufacturing to invest in small, smart technology. Specific manufacturing, having updated technology is vital to keeping manufacturers competitive on a national and global scale. Do you support this? And is this something you think will move forward? And you want to flip a coin? Or let's make Brian do it, shall we?
Okay, Brian, it's yours.
Well, this isn't fair. I was first last time, I think, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You're doing a good job. I think this to me makes sense. I think it's a good thing that we're doing this. what this does is it rewards investments into smart technologies. And, in a lot of ways, we're doing this now. We have been doing this for a while. I know that there's a biomass things that we're doing that give tax credits to, and we've been doing this since I was elected, but we take every single element that we can out of a kernel of corn when we're processing corn. And in the end, there's things that can be done with every bit of waste that we would consider waste at the end of the day on some of these bio products that we produce in the state of Iowa. So it just adds value. It adds value for the farmer. It adds value, and that's just one example. What we do with computer technologies and things like that. So what we do here in the state of Iowa that can help us market some of these products on a world basis is what this is about. It has great significance when it comes to revenues that might come into the state, which in turn helps us collect taxes, and so sales taxes, things like that. So I think these are good ideas. I know under the 4.0 there's a group of professionals, manufacturers, and folks that understand these issues and these technologies who are kind of forming a think tank to help each other out, even though a lot of times they're not necessarily competitive, but they're doing things that are good for the state of Iowa. And these will bring in a lot of jobs if we can get these technologies into the state and we can become the leader in some of these areas. So I applaud it. I think it's a great idea. The best and the newest technologies is what you have to be invested in, and you have to understand that things change so fast in technology that you've got to be out in front. If you're 3 or 4 years behind, by the time you get caught up, something else has come to the forefront, and there's other leaders. And so, I think it's a good idea. I think the governor did a good job in making this an issue. So, I guess that's all I really have to say about it. It's a good deal.
Senator?
Very good. So this, the bill that we're talking about, HSB 233, I was just aware what the bill number was about 3 minutes before we started here. So in my in-depth research on it, it does a couple of things, in part for high quality jobs credits. And there's a section on tourism, allotting $5 million for more Iowa tourism. And in addition to technology advancements for manufacturers. I agree with what Brian just said. We've got to make sure that our manufacturing divisions here in Iowa are adopting the latest and greatest technology and are able to attract good paying jobs to Iowa. Good paying jobs, people pay taxes, and those taxes allow us to do things like rural internet, broadband, and building good roads and having good schools, et cetera. So from a conceptual standpoint, I'm in favor of it. It is on the House side. It hasn't been onto the Senate side of things yet, but conceptually, it seemed like a good bill to me.
All right, thank you. There's another question here that will dovetail on that. And I think Brian probably answered a piece of this in his remarks to the former question. With states opening and people returning to work, coupled with the cancellation of the Keystone Pipeline, we've seen gas prices soar. Since demand is so high, this would be a prime time to try and increase production and supply of ethanol as well. Senate File 481 and Companion Bill House Study Bill 185 work to increase infrastructure for higher blends of ethanol and biodiesel. It is estimated this bill will increase ethanol demand by over 117 million gallons and biodiesel by over 200 million gallons over the first 5 years. Do you believe that Senate File 481 and House Study Bill 185 is a good solution for increasing supply and demand for our farmers and helping lower the price of gasoline at the pump. Boy, if you can, if you can answer that one, more power to you, sir. Senator, would you like
All
to
right,
start?
so sure, I'll start first on this one. I've certainly noticed the fuel prices at the pump, $2.69, $2.79 a gallon right now, and seems to continue to be going up. I'm not sure why in the world we would cancel that pipeline or do some of the things that we do. That's beyond me on why we do some of the things that we do in this country. This particular bill, I think it's been changed now. It says SF 481. I think it's now SF 549. Sometimes as bills move through the process, the numbers change, and you've got to try to keep up with the changes in numbers. But that particular bill, I've read through it. I've talked with Farm Bureau about it and Farm Bureau members, as well as some petroleum folks about it. There's good things in this bill, and there's some things that trouble me. I'm a big ethanol fan. I use it in all my vehicles, and I'm very much in favor of promoting ethanol in the state. Some of the things that this does that I don't care much for is it essentially puts regular gasoline. It doesn't outlaw it, but it close to outlaws it. You've got folks with motorcycles and classic cars and ATVs and other vehicles, things that you use around the farm that run on regular gasoline that ethanol is not great for. That would be impacted. And biodiesel has its pros and its cons as well. There are some vehicles that biodiesel works very well in, and others that have issues with it, particularly if you've got a vehicle that sits around for a long time. Biodiesel can cause some issues. So I like conceptually where we're going with this. I think the state needs to do everything that it can to promote ethanol. Whether or not that will end up bringing gas prices down or not, I'm not sure. It might just help hold them at bay and not let them skyrocket into that $4 range like we saw some years ago. But it's got some really good points to it, and I would really love to incentivize new infrastructure that incentivizes higher levels of ethanol like E15 and E85 and the biodiesel. I think we've got a biodiesel 1 through 10 now, and this would bring it up to 1 through 20. And then E10 would have to move to E15. And I don't think those things are negatively impactful on anyone to move from an E10 to an E15 standard. And it helps with the infrastructure. A gas station wants to put in some new pumps. It helps them pay for a portion of that to upgrade to the newer standards. So pros and cons. I haven't seen it yet in subcommittees to hear what some of the other people think about it in the Senate. But how's that for being non-committal? It's good and it's bad. So we'll go from there. I like some parts of it and dislike some parts of it. So Brian, help me out.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much help I'm going to be, but I'll throw my 2 cents in here. The bill, I think it is a good, it's got good intentions. It's trying to help our farm community, and which is in the overall health of the state is a good thing. There is one problem I have with it. I think what we may be doing is mandating private businesses, convenience stores, those types of things, but not really giving them a whole lot of help on the financial side. So that this would cost a lot of money for small convenience stores, the ones that are owned by private entities that maybe don't have a whole lot of have the kind of money that it would take to do the upgrade. And the upgrade is expensive. To do the upgrade right, you would probably have to spend, I've heard $50,000 per tank, possibly. And that's not, I don't believe that is with even changing the tank out. And I've heard that this also, tanks that are pre-1990 might have to be replaced just because they're older, and this is going to put more ethanol in there, which I think could cause a little more corrosion at a faster pace in those older tanks. So there's a lot of dollars involved with it. And so I think we have to figure out a way, if we're going to do this, to help out those smaller convenience stores, if we're going to require that they put in a certain amount of this blended fuel. So that's the only thing I'd have to say that would be the downside of this. But there's a lot of upsides too. So if we can get that part worked out, I think it's a great idea. And again, I agree with Craig too, that we have to make regular gas available because there's some things out there that have to have it. So for us to say that you can't have it at your station, I think would be a mistake also.
All right, thank you both. And our next question is that there's some rumors in the Senate, so I guess we know where we're going to start this time, don't we?
Yes, we do.
That's going around to release a bill with income tax cuts, corporate tax cuts, and maybe others. Is there any likelihood that a tax bill will be introduced this year?
All right. Well, you went twice last time. I'll go twice this time here.
Thanks, Craig.
So it's a good rumor. I would sure love to see it happen. And if it is happening, it's happening somewhere else other than in front of my desk. The things that I've heard are obviously, the governor wants to eliminate some of the triggers that would allow for some of the tax cuts that are already built into the law to happen sooner. And I'd be in favor of that. I haven't seen a bill to that effect yet, and it may come after this next round from this particular funnel. Other than that, I haven't seen anything else that would go that route. I do know that I've heard from many senators, I guess, the concern that we don't know exactly where we're at. We've got a pretty good idea that we've got $300 million extra in our accounts, but that is an estimate based on certain things. And until I can't remember the acronym, but the next round comes from our group that gives us information on where we think we are tax-wise. I don't see anybody going in and saying we're going to cut taxes. We think we're way ahead of the game, but we don't know that for sure until we have a much better sense that we're ahead of the game. I don't see that happening.
Brian, is it more than a rumor?
Well, there's no doubt that the governor would like to see that the tax, the triggers be taken out. I like the triggers. I think we should keep the triggers myself. And I guess my thinking is if the triggers aren't needed, if we want to take the triggers out, because we're going to have growth that we're expecting, and it'd be a good thing, then the triggers aren't really going to affect it anyway. We're going to the fact that there are triggers there aren't going to matter because the growth will take care of that issue. So I'm a little bit leery on that one. I think one thing that we are looking at, I don't know if you'd call this an income tax cut, but basically our budget with the REC is based on that all the money that comes in to taxpayers in the state of Iowa through PPP, the federal part of the COVID relief, and the extended unemployment would be taxed. And I know on the House side, we're talking very seriously, and I think we really want to do this, is not tax anything that you receive from the PPP as a business or the extended unemployment, and not have that taxable, which would be very helpful. That in itself would be a pretty good tax cut. $120 million is what we could be collected, and that's going to be given back to the taxpayers in the form of not taxing them for those benefits that they receive. So that to me would be a very helpful tax cut in itself, if you want to call it that. Now, some people would say it's really not a tax cut if you never intended to collect it in the first place. So, I mean, you could go through semantical arguments if it's really a tax cut or not. But in my mind, I guess I would say that we're we have the option of of collecting it, and we're not taking that option. At least this, I'm not sure where the Senate's at on this. I'm just talking about where the House is on that one piece of policy that we're working on right now in the House. So, other than that, I don't see a whole lot of stuff going on just between the two things that Craig and I just talked about.
REC was the acronym that couldn't come to my head, and that's not the Rural Electric Corporation. That's Revenue Estimating Commission.
Right.
Committee.
Conference. Yeah.
Conference, thank you.
And they're going to be releasing their findings here real soon. I think it's this month that we'll have that, and we can look at that, and that'll really give us a driver on where we need to go from there as far as what we're going to collect.
Very anxious to see that report.
Yeah.
I think everyone is.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, onwards and upwards. Election question. How will election integrity law ensure uniformity throughout Iowa? And how will the accuracy and validity of each absentee ballot be secured? Will it remain easy for Iowans to vote? And I think the last question is the person that submitted this, that's really what they wanted to hear. You want to start that one, Brian?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so what the bill really does is the main components are right now you could request an absentee ballot up to 6 months before the election. This brings it down to 90 days before the election, which I think is, to me, this is just kind of common sense. 120 days is a lot of time. 90 days to me, it does make sense. From the time that the absentee ballot is sent out to the time it needs to be returned, went from 29 days to 20 days. That's the only thing in the bill that I think I would have very easily lived with the 29 days that was there before. 20 does seem reasonable. The only question is the mail has slowed down a bit. And so I think that is a legitimate reason why we could have kept it at 29 days. There's a lot of folks that are concerned about the ability to get that ballot back because of who can deliver the ballot. It does state in there that it can be a designated person from the voter, so it doesn't have to be the spouse, it doesn't have to be the daughter, it's just whoever they designate. And so if they request it prior to 20 days before the election, which was they have 60 days to request it now. And so when they request it, they got plenty of time to request it. The auditor will send it out 20 days prior. Even with I'm not going to say poor mail service, I'm not trying to put the USPS down, but I'm saying if it gets there in a slower fashion than what you'd want, I still believe that there's time. Another issue that evolved last year is there were 3 auditors in the state of Iowa who kind of took the law into their own hands and did it the way they wanted to. One of those issues that they did that we really don't want to see for the most part is completely filling in the absentee ballot for the person on the other end, including their PIN number, which if that would have happened here this election, I know of 3 or 4 people who came to me and said that their spouse had died 4 or 5 years ago and they received a ballot in their spouse's name. Well, if it's totally filled out and the information is already on there and the PIN number, what would have kept the surviving spouse from just sending it in for their spouse that was deceased? Those kinds of things, those are just common sense. I don't see where that should even be an issue. But that was one of those things. And there is something in the law that we passed. It says that if you're an auditor and you don't follow the law of the state of Iowa, you could have charges pressed against you. And I just want to say to the local auditors in the districts that I'm in, you're doing a fantastic job. This is not aimed at you. This is clear, wanton decision by an auditor that says that we know what the law is, but we don't care. We're going to do it the way we want to. Without that, you might as well not even have the law. So I think that was a portion of the bill that did make sense, but it is in no way trying to diminish the good job and the good work that our local auditors are doing around here. And there's some other moving parts to the bill, but I think those are probably the primary parts to it.
Very good. Yeah, I agree with everything that Brian just said. And I had read a quote the other day from one of those auditors that Brian was just talking about, where that auditor said something to the effect, I'm going to try to paraphrase it, but it was, yeah, I knew it was against the law. What are you going to do about it? And exactly. Wow. And part he was right, or she, not even sure who it was, but there was no teeth into this law. And now this law has some teeth to it that, well, okay, if you're going to do it and you know it's against the law, you're going to get fined a considerable amount of money, and perhaps even some criminal action against you. This particular bill that we're talking about here won't matter if the governor doesn't sign it. As far as I know, she still hasn't signed it yet. So it's been sitting on her desk for a week. And I don't know what the reason for that might be, but the misconduct was the big part for me. And not just like what Brian just said, the local auditors, I think, have done a fantastic job of keeping things in line. One other thing that the bill does is it establishes that drop box. And I think a lot of people here in Carroll use the drop box out in front of the auditor's office. By law, there was no such thing as a drop box. That was something that happened because of COVID and emergency powers. And now this actually puts it into law that you can have a drop box, but you can only have one per county, and it has to be under surveillance to keep people from messing with it. Also, Outlaws ballot harvesting. And that's a practice that has been increasing throughout the country, where groups of people, typically partisans, will go places and ask people to, oh, you got your ballot filled out? Here, I'll take it to the county courthouse for you. And, it's fairly innocuous. It's a nice thing to do for people, unless you've got bad intentions. And, put in your favorite group that you dislike here, be it liberal or ultra conservative or whatever. Say the Proud Boys or the KKK went into a neighborhood and said, hey, we'll take your ballot to the courthouse for you. And it never gets there. This outlaws that. And I'm not saying that kind of thing actually happened in Iowa, but it was an opening that we saw in the current law that we wanted to close, because we did see it being abused in other states. So it also changes the closing time of the polling from 9 o'clock on general elections to 8 o'clock. And we've had this varying, depending on what type of an election is, the time changes on what time the polls close. And this standardizes it at 8 o'clock, which I believe is fairly in line with almost most other states anyway. Some states close at 6, but ours would be closed at 8 o'clock. And like Brian said, there's a lot of changes in just the number of days out, but I don't think it's intrusive at all. You got 70 days out that you can request a ballot, and 20 days out that the auditor can send you a ballot. You can actually, I think the law clarifies that you can actually call the auditor and ask for a ballot to be sent to you, or an absentee ballot request to be sent to you. So it's easy to vote in Iowa. This doesn't make it any harder to vote. It's easy to vote and hard to cheat, and that's what we're really after.
Right. Okay, I know the person that proposed this question, and other states are, well, if you look at the Supreme Court, for instance, there's a case from Arizona right now that the lawyer discussing voting in Arizona said the reason we're doing what we're doing is to make sure we can win. I don't believe he actually said that in front of the court, but he did. And there are many in Iowa that are afraid that we've got a good system and probably want to keep it that way. And from the explanation both of you just gave me, I don't see anything that's really going to change in terms of my ability to vote.
Yeah, I agree. And, there was some conversation that I had too, and I had forgot to bring this up, what Craig said, moving from 9 o'clock to 8 o'clock. There's folks out there that would say that that was just our way of making it less available to a few people. And I don't know how many this would affect, but this request came from, and I'm not going to claim that the Carroll County auditor asked for this, but there were many auditors that did, and their reasoning is that those folks that are manning or at those voting booths and working those areas are oftentimes elderly, and they were kind of asking for it because they're getting there at, I believe, maybe 7 o'clock in the morning, and just to cut an hour back, I think they felt like that was something that would be helpful for the volunteers that have to go in there and work. So it wasn't, we're not doing this, or I'm not. I don't think anybody in our party thinks that this is going to cause less people to vote, because that's not our intention. It really is not. And this is just saying to those, in a practical way, to those folks that have to work as don't have to, they volunteer to do this, that we want to help you out a little bit too. And so that part of the bill was actually kind of contentious, because they said, well, you're just cutting down the hours so a person can vote. Well, yeah, I guess we are, but we're also taking into consideration the folks that have to work those ballot booths.
Okay. Thank you both for the additional response there. Brian, you mentioned earlier something about the bottle bill, so let's discuss it for a moment. What's being done to increase the per can reimbursement for bottles?
Okay, I'm not sure what's gone on in the Senate or if they have a companion bill, but I know what the House bill talks about is instead of going with the extra penny, what it does, and this bill is going to change, so this may not be the final, the extra penny may come back into play. But right now what the bill says in the House is that the redemption center and the entity, whether it be your grocery store, whoever, work out an agreement where they are paid under contract, that they negotiate how much money they will, that they think it's fair to reimburse you to do the redemption part. You still get the penny, nothing changes there for the redemption center, but there's also an added negotiation that goes on. It's supposed to be in good faith between all the different entities. So it could be Hy-Vee and the redemption center negotiate an extra cost for them, or an extra price for them to take on that responsibility. Fairway could do the same thing. Every convenience store could do the same thing. But right now, and right now, anything is better than what we're doing right now. Right now, the system is imploding. We have grocery stores refusing to take the cans back, even though in some cases, depending on how far they are from a redemption center, they're supposed to be taking them back. We have places that sell, smaller places that sell pop and beer in the town, in Carroll and everywhere. I mean, there's some franchise stores statewide who their policy is, we don't take back the nickels. We sell it, we charge the nickel, we're not taking it back. By definition, they're kind of breaking the law. So we got to get this thing straightened out. We got to get the redemption centers to a point where they can make a profit. However this works out, I think they have to have 2 cents. And some people would argue for more. But let's just say we went to 4 cents. The problem, I think, then is all those places that say they want them out of their store all of a sudden think that they're okay, because then they see a profit margin there. So I think 2.5, somewhere in there. I don't know if you can split it into a half cent or not, but 2 cents to me just makes sense right now. And I'll do everything I can to fight for this, because I know that in Carroll, they're taking on other counties that have basically given up on the whole thing. And they're not, it's kind of like, okay, we're getting more business, so we're making it up in volume, even though we're losing money. Well, when you're losing money, you don't make it up in volume. So.
Absolutely correct. There are 3 bills in the Senate on the bottle bill. and only one of those addresses that redemption center amount. So one of the bills would require distributors to put all of those nickels that they're collecting into a bank account that's visible to the public. And that's not being met very well by the distributor lobby. But that one has passed through the Senate subcommittee, and we'll see where that one goes. And the second bill, I can't remember exactly what it does, but it doesn't address the 1 cent at all to the redemption centers. And if you don't address the redemption centers, it's kind of a useless bill, really.
You're right.
The third bill does address the redemption center, but takes all those nickels out of the distributors and puts them back into the state, into a state treasury fund. And that becomes problematic as well. So I guess in short, I'll say I don't like any of the 3 bills that are there, but they are what they are. And we're going to have to come up with a solution. This is a 42-year-old problem, or 42 years in the making problem. And every redemption center out there working off of 1 cent is breaking even at best, or in some cases losing money. We are so fortunate in Carroll County to have a redemption center here in town, and we've got one in Lakeview, and there's one in Audubon, and I'm fairly certain there's one up in Storm Lake as well. There are counties that have no place to take these cans. You got paid a nickel, and then it goes into the garbage can, and that's not what this was about either. So we're going to fix it, I think, but it's there's an awful lot of cooks in the kitchen on this one.
Yeah, there are.
More cooks in the kitchen than we need, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the clock on the wall, it said we had about 4 minutes left, and then that's going to be pretty tough to get in a question here, but it's a short question. And if you want to try it, let's do it.
Okay. What you
Do
got?
you support the bill that's going to remove the Iowa gun permit requirement, allowing Iowans to purchase and carry a handgun without applying for a permit? And
Should we answer it fast? Yes. Yeah, I read the bill, and I understand where some of the issues are at with folks, but 18 other states have similar bills that have passed through, including Missouri and South Dakota. So we've got bordering states with pretty much the same type of language on it. And I don't see a particular problem. I'm not afraid to go into South Dakota because they don't have to have a permit to carry a firearm. This is being backed. In fact, I got the Carroll paper I just picked up this morning, and there's my mug on the front page talking about this with County Attorney John Worden and Representative Best. And County Attorney Worden did the carried the water for us there. They don't even quote me on the front page, so that's good. But he's in favor of it as well. I've talked with a number of law enforcement people who don't seem to have an issue with this bill. I can understand why people are a bit intrepid about it. Back before we had the permit process, we used to have where you would go into the county sheriff, and the county sheriff could decide yes or no to an individual, and it was hodgepodge. Every county had a different reason why you could or couldn't carry. We had, I think, 30,000 people at the time that had permits through that process. Then we changed the process where it's a shall issue, where the sheriff had to have a really good reason not to give you a permit. Our 30,000 went to 400,000. And we were told that it was going to be blood in the streets and it was going to be the wild, wild west. And none of that ever happened. Iowans are good people. And I think this is just a way to allow people to exercise their Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms without having to have permission from the government. So I'm in favor. Ryan?
I don't even own a gun. I would shoot myself in the foot. I would be the last person you would want walking around with a gun. But I see this as a property rights issue. I think it's just a rights issue. And so I support it. The acquiring of a gun isn't going to change. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Craig, but if you want to buy a gun at a gun store, you're not going to be able to just walk in. You still got to go through the background check issue. Right. Nothing really changes in that. And in some ways, I'm understanding that it might actually be a little bit more scrutinized than it is now, that portion of it in itself. So I don't see it as the end of the world. I do like, I believe in the House version, and I don't know, do we have companion bills on this, Craig? Do you know? Or
SF 535, I think, is the.
Okay, so we do have companion bills. So I think that there's going to be, I think it's going to be something that's going to go through. I think that the Republicans on both sides of the House and Senate both are in favor of this. So,
All right, thank you both. I'd like to thank the City of Carroll for hosting this today. We appreciate it. Thank the members of the Carroll Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee, of which I'm a member, and all of you who submitted a question. I hope you learned something today. You have an opportunity to see these two gentlemen again on March 6th and April 10. And if you have questions, email Ashley at the Chamber office, and we'll all live happily ever after. Good day, and thank you for attending.